Well, let me conclude our discussion of the book of Joshua with a discussion of the nature of the settlement and a bit more about Rahab. In terms of the settlement of Canaan, was it a conquest? Was it a migration, or was it a peasants' revolt? Now, the conquest is the thing that the Bible talks about, and for theological conservatives, this would almost necessarily be the primary model for how the Israelites settled Canaan. Well, we should mention some other views that are common among critical scholars. The gradual migration model is a model proposed by Albrecht Alt and Martin Note. This view rejects the Bible's conquest stories, but I would comment that migration does seem to play a role in the settlement during the time of the Judges, though not so much related to the book of Joshua. A third view is the peasants' revolt model. This was proposed by George Mendenhall, who for many years taught at the University of Michigan, and then also Norman Gottwald held to a peasants' revolt kind of model. It's based on the evidence that we have from the Elamarna tablets that date to the 14th century BC, where it speaks of a revolt of the Habiru in conjunction with Labayu of Shechem. And they argue that, well, yeah, these Habiru are related to the Hebrews, but what really happened was that this social class of Habiru rebelled, and then they became a new group in the land, the Hebrews. Now, there may be some truth to this account if the Habiru joined forces with Israel at Shechem. But the bottom line would be, at least for those of us who accept the Bible's accounts of things, we would have to say that primarily the conquest was the model of settlement, though it's possible that some revolted and joined Israel after they arrived, the people at Shechem. And then there was some migration of Israelites after getting bogged down in the original conquest during the time of the Judges. In any case, in the book of Joshua, the conquest is not a full occupation. It only secured a foothold, as we'll see when we look at the book of Judges. Let me move on to Rahab and her lie in Joshua chapter 2. There it says, "So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab, 'Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house.' But the woman said, 'Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. And at dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them.' Then the parenthetical remark, 'But she had hidden them taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof.'" The moral question here is, what are we to make of Rahab's lie? And depending on which Christian ethical system you may adopt, you may make different things of it. One view would be to say that the lie was actually fully justified, that in this circumstance where telling the truth would cause the harm of an innocent person, the morally right thing to do would be to lie. Others would say, well, no, lying is always wrong. That's akin to bearing false witness against your neighbor. But sometimes it may be a lesser of evils. It might still be wrong, but what else was there to do? Sometimes in life there is no morally right solution, only the lesser of evils. So perhaps it was wrong to lie, and having lied, she should go to the Lord and confess her sin of having lied. And yet, under the circumstances, lying may have been the least evil thing that she could do at that point. Some would say it's wrong, but at least forgivable, because Rahab, being a non-Israelite prostitute, lacked full revelation from God. Now, she is commended in the New Testament, as we've seen. She's commended in Hebrews 11, verse 31 for her faith. She's commended in James 2:25 for acting on that faith by her deeds, helping the spies. But the New Testament does not commend her for lying. And those who might be tempted to condemn her for lying, would you have done better? After all, it's one thing in the leisure of your own study to come up with some great idea or plan as to what you should have done. But when they come knocking on the door wanting to arrest the spies, you don't have time to think. So, was the lie justified? A fully good thing to do given the circumstances? Lying to the people that want to do evil? Was it evil, but the lesser of evils? Again, Scripture does not commend her for her lie, does commend her for her faith, does commend her for her deeds. And we bear in mind that she lacked full revelation, and it would have been difficult to think of something better to do. Now, this is the end of this lecture, but I'm going to throw in a joke at the end, so if you're in a hurry, you don't have to listen to this. It turns out that many years ago, there was supposedly a big debate in the Baptist churches in Kentucky. And the debate was between the lying Baptists and the truth-telling Baptists. And the circumstances was something like this, that a settler on the frontier heard a knock at the door, and it turns out it was an Indian. And this was a time where the Indians were fighting against the settlers. And when he answered the door, the Indian asked, "Is anybody else in the house?" Well, it turns out that he had taken his wife and his children and hidden them under the floorboards of the house, just in case the Indians came in and attacked, that he might be killed, but they would be saved. And so when the Indian asked him, "Is there anyone else in the house?" What should he have done? Well, this led to a split in the Baptist church as to what he should have done. Baptist churches are notorious for splitting. There were some that who we will designate the truth-telling Baptists said, well, it's always right to tell the truth. He should have told the truth, even if it resulted in his family being killed. But then there were another faction of Baptists, we'll call them the lying Baptists, who said by no means should he have said the truth and told where his family was. He should have lied. And so you have the lying Baptists and the truth-telling Baptists, and that's a story there. Now, it's not just totally fictional. Back during World War II, you have the story of Corrie ten Boom, who was hiding Jews from the Nazis who had taken over the Netherlands, and she told lies to protect them. And she would have believed that her lies were fully justified. So anyway, that's the story of the lying Baptists and the truth-telling Baptists, and that ends our discussion of the book of Joshua.